In this week's episode of Space Dandy, lovers are trendy, baby. Going into this week's episode, I was a little apprehensive, and that's only because I'm not really a big fan of romance stories, especially ones that are tired and cliche as all hell. This week's story implemented the whole fake boyfriend, fake girlfriend storyline, where two characters are posing as significant others to trick someone else. Throughout the whole story, they hate each other, and then at the very end, they suddenly realize they were meant to be. That does not happen in this week's episode of Space Dandy, and I loved it for it. It could have easily gone down cliche alley, and don't worry, all of you people who have wanted to see Dandy and Scarlet get together, you're gonna get to see some heartwarming scenes between the two. In fact, they even share a pretty steamy kiss, while a giant mecha mobile suit is destroying a space colony behind them. Epic! So the main story this week is that Scarlet is trying to ditch her ex-boyfriend Dolph, who's completely insane. He's a batshit crazy stalker who stalks people in his massive mecha mobile suit, and I love that because he's always like hiding behind something, but it's this big freaking robot with glowing red eyes. Everybody's gonna notice it, and Scarlet seems to be the only one who notices it throughout the course of the episode. That is until Dolph finally appears at the very end and goes completely insane. So in order to get away from her ex-boyfriend, she's going to have Dandy pose as her fake boyfriend, and thus the hilarity ensues. Immediately, as the dialogue in the episode begins, you can tell this is going to be a very sharp episode, and a lot of that has to do with the interactions between Scarlet and Dandy. In fact, I love that first bit of dialogue, where she's like, alright, well, I'm going to take a week's paid vacation, and you're going to pose as my boyfriend. And then Dandy says, I don't know, I don't think I'm really free. To which Scarlet says, oh no, you're free. And Dandy, all he can say after that is, burn. Something about that dialogue just let me realize that this episode is going to be a lot of fun. So, they go to this place which is known as Planet Trendy, where all of these young lovers go to have their honeymoons and go on dates, and go and do all these crazy things like skiing down mountains, going to the beach, and seeing intergalactic fireworks. It's definitely a feast for the eyes in terms of the animation, and at the beginning of the episode, it sort of starts a little cliche with the fact that they don't really seem to like each other too much, and they just sort of tolerate each other for the purpose of this mission. But as the episode is going on, Dandy is like suddenly just finding these rare aliens out of nowhere and catching them, and in a way, it kind of starts to make Scarlet jealous because the attention isn't being paid towards her anymore. And there's a scene in the middle of the episode where she returns home, and there's this weird spider in her bathroom. And this is Space Dandy, so it's not going to be just like some little pissant spider. It's this weird, creepy-ass The Thing-looking spider, which is all purple and gangly, and Dandy has to kill it with his laser gun, and it's a really well-animated scene, but he ends up destroying her home. And in this part of the episode, they start to just suddenly break out into laughter because of how ridiculous the entire situation is, and then they finally start to find some common ground because they love this one action movie star who's a clear reference to Chuck Norris, and they even plan on hanging out and even watching this movie one time, and that's when they finally start to get along with each other. There's a scene where they're walking down the beach and they start holding hands, and then Dolph appears. Dolph is hilarious. Like I said, he's a reference to Mobile Suit Gundam characters. He looks a lot like the same art style. He even exits the mobile suit the same way with the same little system, the little pulley system. He has a uniform that looks very similar to the ones that we saw in the original Mobile Suit Gundam, albeit with different colors. And he's insane. He's really crazy. They don't really get into the whole like backstory of how he was involved with Scarlet, but when he sees Dandy and Scarlet kiss for the first time, he flips out and starts just destroying everything in the colony. And you thought this might result in just another standard Space Dandy action scene, but I love how it's abruptly brought to an end where they're like, well, Dolph was actually arrested. And he's going to go to space jail for stalking and for aggravated assault. I just thought that was funny because this is the type of series that usually just sort of kicks that type of stuff to the curb, and they actually brought a little bit of realism there at the very end. So, now that Dolph is in jail, Scarlet and Danny no longer have a need to be boyfriend and girlfriend, so they decide to separate and go their separate ways. And then you can tell that something is definitely bothering Dandy. He still wants to go and see Scarlet, and he even skips out on going to boobies. So you know it's pretty damn important to him. So it ends in this sort of cliched manner where he's running out with that weird Chuck movie in his hands because he wants to go and find Scarlet so that they can watch it together. and he almost finds her. There's a scene where he calls out her name, and as soon as she turns around, there's this train that comes between them, and they no longer can see each other, so they decide to just walk away. Now, at the very end of the episode, it just goes back to a normal day. Dandy is back at the alien registration. He's trying to pass off another alien. It doesn't work. He just walks out, and that's pretty much the end of the episode. It's completely up for interpretation. So, I loved this episode. What's the rundown on this week's episode of Space Dandy? Absolutely hilarious. And I think what I loved most about this episode is, even though it was like a love story between Scarlet and Dandy, it didn't change like the characters that they were. Dandy was still very much Dandy throughout this episode, and Scarlet was still the same old badass Scarlet that she's always been. And I love seeing them interact with each other, and it was just fun getting to see them go on all these weird various dates when they were skiing down the mountain on these rocket skis, and when there was that big giant squid in the ocean, and there was just a lot of just random humor, especially from the narrator this week, especially when he was explaining what Planet Trendy was. One of the funniest bits of dialogue I've ever heard from that narrator. Crunk getting crunk in the club. I never thought I would hear the narrator say that, but it had me rolling over in laughter. This show is hilarious. It's definitely my favorite anime comedy that I have ever seen. And again, there were a lot of scenes that weren't as like crazy or bombastic as some of the previous ones, but there was a lot of great uses of montages and the music. Oh, the music was so good this week, especially at the very end of the episode when Dandy was trying to find Scarlet. And that whole scene is another scene that I love because it's going to be up for interpretation for a lot of people. Obviously, we can't really see what's going on in their heads. We can't really know what they're thinking. And it's pretty obvious they have some sort of feelings for each other. They just don't want to admit it whatsoever. And like I said, this whole episode could have gone down that cliche alley, and it didn't. It avoided it, and I'm really proud of it for doing that. Because it could have actually brought the episode down a little bit for me and been like, okay, that was really expected. But I love that it went into that completely unexpected route. I would have liked a little more QT and Meow this week, but that's only because I love their characters, and I really wish they would focus on them a little bit more. And I love the fact that in the previous seasons, they do focus on certain characters. They give them like their own episodes. And this was another Scarlet episode, and she really hasn't had that many. And she's a really awesome character. She's another one of the female characters in the series who is not only gorgeous, but incredibly competent as well, and very sharp and very funny. She has a lot of great scenes with Dandy this week. So if you're a fan of the series, definitely check this one out. It's just like the rest. It's got great production value, but this week you get to see two of the greatest characters interacting with each other, and it's like oil and water, and it's hilarious. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 5 out of 5, another perfect episode of Space Dandy. Thank you guys for watching my review today. Before you leave, make sure to hit that like button so you can give this video a thumbs up. And make sure to tell me what you thought about this week's incredibly romantic episode of Space Dandy. And what do you want to see from the future of the series? We're almost at the end and it is so sad. And make sure to subscribe to our channel if you have not already. That way you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews. And you can also check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. You'll find links for all that stuff down below.
Do you like Amazon.com? I know I do. Corey and I now have an Amazon link in our video description box below. And if you go to it and buy anything through Amazon.com, it will support our channel. So bookmark that link, make it happen, and support our channel without having to do a damn thing.
Another great way you guys can help support our channel is by donating directly through our PayPal link in the description box below. We recommend $2 a month, although this is completely optional. But the best way to go about this is by sneaking into your mom's room and taking $2. This way, she won't even notice. And we won't have to shake you up for all of your lunch money. So guys, that concludes this review today. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.